So it's wonderful to be here in Moscow to speak to members of the Russian Wikimedia community, both in person and online, others from the general public, technology community, a lot of people here obviously from Yandex. Yandex has always been a very good friend to Wikipedia, and we appreciate that. And part of what we're doing here is to introduce you to, as was said, the local community leaders and our local organization. They're available to discuss collaborations, concepts, ideas, ways that we might all work together. I really want to thank Stas and Vladimir for organizing this event. So it's great to be here. So September in Russia, back to school month. I'm always love this time of year myself. I have a 5-year-old daughter who's off to school, and there's a little crispness in the air, and it's exciting, and it's a little last bit of good weather before the winter comes. And you know, for me, this is I want to talk about education. And technology and education. You know, one of the things that I found really interesting is that there is a Knowledge Day celebration here, September 1st. In Russia, I think this is a wonderful concept. I wish we had it elsewhere. So everywhere in the world, when it's the first day of school for children, obviously it's a big day, but to actually turn that into a holiday is a fantastic way to celebrate the concept of learning, of gaining knowledge, of, you know, getting deeper. So this is a fantastic thing. And obviously for Wikipedia, the idea of education, the idea of knowledge is really fundamental to everything that we do. So this is the original, or this is not the original, but anyway, my original vision statement for Wikipedia is: imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. That's the original vision statement for Wikipedia. This is actually the broader mission of the Wikimedia Foundation, which is slightly modified to indicate that it isn't just about the encyclopedia and it isn't just about access to knowledge, it's actually about participating in knowledge, freely sharing the sum of all human knowledge. And this is really what it's all about. We have a shared vision for the future, and we believe that knowledge is a foundation, that in order to have stable societies, peaceful societies, free societies, we need to have people as informed as possible in a very objective way. One of the things, of course, we're all aware that the world is full of difficult conflicts all around the world. But what we find in the Wikipedia community is that ordinary people are very open to learning from other people, to sharing what they know with other people. And what we want to be is, in the media, we're a kind of a different thing. Most of the media that you read will have an agenda, take a side, et cetera, et cetera. We want to pull back and say, no, let's actually just be very calm, and everybody knows the style of Wikipedia. Just we give you the facts, we explain both sides of the story, we don't try to make you believe one thing or another. And this has always been a core part of this, but in order to make this happen, connected societies require shared knowledge frameworks. So one of the things that really makes Wikipedia work is the connections that we have between the different communities and the fact that we're all using the same platform. And importantly, that we're using free licenses, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, that allow knowledge that's produced in one place to be transmitted and translated in other places all around the world. Now, one of the things that people always, that I find frustrating is traditionally in the last 15 years, Wikipedia is treated as a technology story. You know, it's a sort of, we're in that category with Google and Yahoo and Yandex and so on around the world, Baidu in China. But in fact, although we use technology, obviously, and the technology of the web and of our open platform is what allows this community to come together, it's actually that community that is really the heart and soul of Wikipedia. We are not fundamentally a technology organization. We obviously have great engineers on staff and so on, but as a technology organization, we're quite small. As a volunteer community, we're so global and so worldwide that actually, if you want to understand Wikipedia, you really have to think of us as more of a cultural group, a cultural institution, rather than as a tech company, because we aren't a tech company. So some of our principles have to do with access. If you go back to the vision statement, we talk about every single person. Wikipedia is inherently global in our vision. We want everyone in the world to have access to knowledge. And this means, interestingly enough, that we are incredibly local as well, because there's no way to direct the work of Russian language Wikipedia from San Francisco. This is impossible. It doesn't even happen. Every local version of Wikipedia is written by people in that language. And so this idea that somehow Wikipedia is an American project is completely not true. It's very local, very global across the world. For us, we're very passionate about access, and in particular access to people in the developing world. Because we're a charity, we really do care a lot. We're very passionate about the next billion people who come online and how will they be able to get access to Wikipedia. One of the things that I always like talking about, we have a project called Wikipedia Zero, where we work with mobile carriers to get access to Wikipedia with no data charges for people in the developing world. This is incredibly important. And we know that not everyone has access. People may have access in theory increasingly because the price of a really inexpensive Android smartphone is dropping dramatically year after year, but airtime is still very expensive. And so Wikipedia Zero is all about this. And so when we started with this and announced it in a few countries, there's this fascinating thing that happened very organically. There were a group of teenagers in South Africa who started an online petition asking their carriers if they would offer Wikipedia for free. And I have a video here, which I'm told someone will help me get the video up, showing these young people reading their open letter. So we have to do this because, as I say, we're not really a technology organization, and I'm not that good at computers. So here we go. So this is the video.
Hi, this is a letter which me and my classmate wrote to access to Wikipedia for free. It goes as follows.
Open letter to Cell C, MTN, Vodacom, and ATAM.
We are learners in grade 12 at Silinjong High School, Joslovo Park, Milnerton, Cape Town.
We recently heard that in some other African countries like Kenya and Uganda,
Cell phone providers are offering their customers free access to Wikipedia. We think this is a wonderful idea and would really like to encourage you also to make the same offer here in South Africa.
Our school does not have a library.
90% of us have cell phones, but it is expensive for us to buy airtime.
So if we could get free access to Wikipedia,
It will make a huge difference to us.
Normally, when we do research, Wikipedia is one of the best sites,
And there is information on just about every topic.
Think of the boost that it will give us as students and to the whole education system of South Africa.
Our education system needs help, and having access to Wikipedia would make a very positive difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you.
English. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So I'm happy to tell you that just 3 months after this video, one of the carriers, I think it was MTN, did do this, and they did a really sweet response video to the children. So this is just one of the kinds of things that we're doing all around the world to work for free access to knowledge. And I think it's important to think about the difference between information and knowledge. Obviously, we all live in a world today where we're inundated with information, unfiltered, unsorted, massive data sets, and so on. But what we really try to do at Wikipedia is to condense that knowledge, to share it in a way and make it accessible to people in a more intellectual sense. So there's a lot of work, academic work, that is very difficult for people to access and understand without someone who takes it and writes it in a way, a neutral way, that makes it possible for you to have an entry point into knowledge. And this is really quite important. And for us, because we've become part of the infrastructure of the world, really, we feel this very strong, very heavy responsibility to make Wikipedia as good as it possibly can be. We really want Wikipedia to be a core part of everyone's learning experience, and we can't do that unless Wikipedia is as reliable as we can make it, etc. And because we're written entirely by volunteers, it's important for us that our community have certain strong principles to make this happen. So just, the basic facts, most of you in this room will already know a lot of this. Started in 2001. We now have 41 million entries, 80,000 active volunteer editors every month, and we're a charity. We're a nonprofit organization. I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about the Russian language Wikipedia, but for the moment, we'll just say we have hundreds of languages. Russian Wikipedia was one of the earliest of the non-English, and more than 85% of the Wikipedia articles are actually in languages other than English. So when people think of Wikipedia as primarily an English language project, I remember many years ago I was in Germany speaking on a panel with a professor, and I was talking about the global nature of Wikipedia, and he said in a very haughty way, yes, but it doesn't do justice when Wikipedia is written in English and then just translated into German. And I said, well, actually, it's not translated into German. It's written by Germans in German, and it's written by Russians in Russia. And this is really important for a lot of reasons. If you think about the context of knowledge, you really need to understand your reader. So if I go to read about Bollywood films, and I'm reading in Hindi, you can just casually mention something that everyone will have the shared cultural reference and they'll understand it. Whereas in English, maybe you actually need to explain something. You need to explain who this person is. Maybe it's just a few words difference, but you really have to customize and make sure that you're giving the same result to everyone, no matter what their language. So it's always been very important to us that each language version is unique, that it meets the needs of the local community. In our global nature, we're not just Wikipedia. We've got a whole host of content projects. So, dictionary project, Wikisource, Wikimedia Commons, Wikibooks, etc., etc. And so there are many aspects to knowledge. Obviously, Wikipedia is the most famous and the most successful, but all of these other projects act as a support structure in many ways for Wikipedia, but they also do their own work that's completely independent of Wikipedia. So there's actually quite a lot going on in all of these projects if you dig in a little bit deeper. And Wikipedia is actually a powerful social movement. I love this picture. This was from our conference this summer that we were in Italy. Every year we have a conference called Wikimania. We do it in a different city every year, so it's sort of like the Olympics. We have a little community competition to judge where it should be, and then we choose a city. I'm hoping someday soon we should be here in Moscow. It would be a fantastic place to have Wikimania. And we bring together volunteers from all around the world, and they come and they share best practices. They say, well, here's the problem we're facing in our language. And then others will say, oh, yes, we had this problem similar. Here's how we dealt with it. And guess what? When we tried that, it didn't work. And we tried this, and then it worked better. And so the volunteers come together to learn from each other and to learn to collaborate and to learn some of the resources that they could use that other people are using. So what are some of the lessons? What are the things that we've learned from Wikipedia? There are many, many things that we've learned. One is that knowledge is collaboratively developed. This is really important, that knowledge is inherently local, it's specific, it comes from many different peoples, many different cultures, and we are better in quality when we work together. That the collaborative open model for Wikipedia has proven in academic studies to produce results that are comparable to a traditional encyclopedia, but at a much, much higher scale. And the reason is, I always have said this, when people are curious or doubtful about the Wikipedia model, I say, well, look, someday we'll look back and we'll look at a traditional encyclopedia and we'll say, oh, what, you mean this entry was written by one person? and reviewed by 2, and then they published it. I'm used to content that's been vetted by hundreds of people, and there's been an extensive dialogue and a debate about every single word in it to make sure that the quality is high as it possibly can be. And obviously, that kind of open editing system creates a lot of noise and sometimes errors and things like this, but it's been really important that we emphasize that we have to work together. Like, this is a global project for everyone to come together to share something for everyone. We've learned that knowledge grows when it's free, and by free here I mean free in the sense of open source software, in the sense of free licensing. So everything in Wikipedia should be freely licensed as much as possible, so you can copy it, modify it, redistribute modified versions. And importantly, you can do all of those things commercially or non-commercially. So this has been a very big boon, as a lot of commercial organizations have been able to use Wikipedia to build tools and things that help spread this knowledge further than it would if we were tightly controlling of it. We want Wikipedia to be reused by everyone, and this is very, very important. It's something that I think we should be very concerned about in general for the internet, is that early spirit of the internet, which was about open sharing and open collaboration. We're now seeing a lot of issues in many, many places around the world of a potential fragmentation of the internet, these kinds of things. So there's a lot of deep internet governance issues that actually are going to impact the internet quite a bit, and most people aren't that interested in deep issues of internet governance, but I think we should care quite a lot. As I said earlier, free licenses have played a very important role here, and one of the things that we've been very successful at is working with galleries, libraries, archives, museums to encourage them to also embrace free licensing models. This has been a very powerful thing, and one of the things, this is another example of how the local work can benefit everyone globally. So for example, we may have here in Russia, I know there's a project I'll talk about in a bit, some bit of knowledge may be produced in a local country by a cultural institution. If they work with us and they put it under a free license, then it gets distributed to the world. And so very often, I always like to give an example of a small town in Norway called Bergen, Norway, where they have an annual festival, a drumming festival, and young boys are drumming and they have a competition, and it's colorful banners and so on. And it's a very old tradition there, which was written by the Norwegians in Norwegian Wikipedia, a very local thing, but they also translated it into English, and from there it was translated into French and German, and et cetera, et cetera. And eventually this will be transmitted to all around the world. So people working locally are able to use Wikipedia to tell the world about their own culture and their own ideas and their own traditions. And this is very powerful, and free licenses are a really core part of this. Obviously, for us, because I said earlier, quality is very important. One of the most important things for Wikipedia is reliable sources. We really need reliable sources. We need high-quality newspapers, magazines, academic journals, and in many ways, Wikipedia ends up being a reflection of reliable sources. So when we have a situation where the reliable sources aren't good, then it's hard for Wikipedia to be good. And so this is something that I personally think is a bigger, broader problem for society, that we need to make sure that we have strong academic institutions, that we have strong press who are doing quality work. This is always very, very important. And as it turns out, the collaboratively built knowledge is reliable. Not completely, not perfectly, but the best academic studies suggest that Wikipedia is of a similar quality to traditional encyclopedias, particularly in the larger languages. There was a really interesting study done in German language, where the German language encyclopedia was tested against Brockhaus, which is the traditional quality encyclopedia in Germany, and managed to win. And that was quite a moment for that community, because they're very passionate about getting it right. So the world is constantly changing, and there's never an automatic final point. So you always have to be ready to collaborate further, to edit, to improve, to realize past mistakes, and to get better and better. And local knowledge is global knowledge. So and I think I already said everything I want to say about that, so I'll just skip on from there. So now I want to talk a little bit more about Russian Wikipedia. Russian Wikipedia is the 9th most popular website in Russia. 1.3 million entries, so that's quite large. 10,000 monthly active editors. And this is interesting here. It's the most popular language of Wikipedia in 10 other countries. So there's their list here: Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, etc. Oftentimes what this is that those local languages, of course, they have their own Wikipedia and their own language, but it's quite small because it's a small language group. And Russian being a large regional language, the people there, well, maybe they turn to their own Wikipedia first, but it doesn't have the information, so then they turn to Russian Wikipedia. So Russian Wikipedia is, in this way, similar to other languages like French and English, that it covers a region that's larger than just their own country, and that's very important. I actually wanted to say one of the things about Wikipedia being the 9th, no, I don't have that stat here, it's the 7th largest or something like this. When we look at the very large language versions of Wikipedia, so if you go search for a list of Wikipedias and you see them ranked by size, that's a very misleading list actually, and you really have to look a little deeper because some of the language versions of Wikipedia have well, I don't want to be critical, but they've cheated a bit with a million bot-written entries. That's a controversial topic within the community, and there's pros and cons to it. But the Russian Wikipedia has a very good depth number, and that depth is just our own internal metric that says how much have these entries been collaboratively written rather than just sort of put up by a robot. And Russian Wikipedia is not just large, it's large and vibrant. There's a large community and a lot of active work and a lot of discussion and debate and things like that. And then also we should point out, because we always say to every single person on the planet in their own language, it's not just Russian. We have 40 Wikimedia projects in regional languages from the Russian Federation. So a lot of the minority languages and things like this are very strong. We see this around the world. One of my favorite examples is Welsh language. So Welsh is a small language of the UK that, in fact, you could say no one really needs Welsh Wikipedia. I mean, a very few, sort of old grannies in villages somewhere, but by and large, everyone who speaks Welsh also is a fluent speaker of English. But people who live in Wales, they're very passionate about their local culture, their mother tongue, and they really want to work to preserve that, and they want to write Wikipedia. And in Welsh is a great example because they're not doing it for any kind of nationalist, separatist, political reasons. They're doing it just for a love of knowledge, and that's actually very, very important. So for us, it's really all about community. As I say, we're not fundamentally a technology story. We're fundamentally a community story. And I just wanted to give a few examples of the power of the Wikimedia community in Russia. This user, Dmitri, how do you pronounce it? Hirokin. Is he here? I heard he might come tonight. No, maybe not. Anyway, great story. He is here. Yes. Fantastic. So he's been a Wikipedian since 2009. He's made great contributions to Wikipedia. In 2013 alone, he wrote a record number of articles for the Russian Wikipedia. Hold on to your seat to hear this number. 4,294 articles. It's a lot of typing, which earned him a special reward from a Wiki Award from Wikimedia Russia. He's also a marathon runner, and then this is where the story gets interesting. In July 2016, he did a solo run around the Lake Baikal in a format of a wiki expedition. So he's taking pictures for Wikimedia Commons as he does this run around the lake. And on the 28th day of the expedition, he was bitten by a tick and was hospitalized with the encephalitis tick in a severe condition. Of course, the Russian Wikipedians, because we are a close-knit community, obviously they were following his story with great sympathy, sending messages of support. Fortunately, he recovered. He's here tonight. So let's give him a cheer and a round of applause. Yeah. So, I made a joke here because our colleague here has come in on a broken leg, which he got at Wikimania this year. I said, there's obviously a very dangerous occupation, editing Wikipedia. You wouldn't think it would be so adventurous, but people do. Here's the guy. Great, fantastic. Great, fantastic. Thank you. So, yeah, yes, yeah, we can sit, yeah. Another example, Wiki Voices. So Wiki Voices has been, it's a project led by Wikimedia Russia, partners in radio, academia, archiving. And the idea is here to create an accessible audio archive of important voices, so the sound of voices. So these are then used in Wikipedia biography articles, and again, around the world. So people may say, they're reading about Leo Tolstoy, and they say, I wonder what his voice sounds like. And so we have recordings of him. This kind of archival work is incredibly important at making a more robust knowledge base, etc. But obviously, you might be thinking, okay, yes, well, if you don't speak Russian, how is this useful to you? Well, okay, academically it is. But then we have other projects that are maybe a bit more accessible. So Wiki Loves Monuments is our photo competition. This is a classic example of how decentralized we are. So when people think of Wikipedia, if you think of us as being like Google and everything is decided in the home office in San Francisco and then everybody in the world is told what to do, you've got completely the wrong idea. Wiki Loves Monuments is now recognized as the largest photo competition in history. It was an incredibly successful project that is ongoing, and it was started by the community. I believe the Dutch Wikipedians started it, had a local success, and it grew from there, and it spread word of mouth through the community. And now, basically, we encourage photographers to do photos of monuments, send them in, and it's a contest, and so on. And you can immediately see how this knowledge is easily transmitted around the world. Like a photo of something amazing in a small village in Russia that may have never really been seen by people in Thailand, for example, is now accessible and available to them. And this is all part of that idea of transmitting culture through Wikipedia. Similarly, Wiki Loves the Earth, which is really more about spectacular, beautiful natural things. And this is also very, very successful. This is a photo of the Lake Shavlinsky Reserve in the Republic of Altai. So this is the kind of thing that if you went to read, let's imagine you're reading in English Wikipedia and you're reading about the Lake Shavlinsky Reserve. Okay, blah, 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 it's a lake. Yeah, great, whatever. You see the photo and immediately you know, you have the idea. You can see the snow in the back and the beautiful water and so on. So photos are an incredibly important part of the Wikipedia experience, and it's something that we're getting better and better at getting. Different content collaboration with Yandex, voice input of text, playback of articles for visually impaired, content translation. These are all important things, but there's more than this. I mean, they sent me a full list of all of the things, many of which I hadn't even heard about, which are amazing collaborations. So we really want to thank everyone here from Yandex for your support, and you know, this is it's amazing. Russian Wikipedia has received the Premia Runeta 7 times. I think maybe you should be banned from further competition. It's not fair. Can't win every year. But these are the kinds of things which are incredibly important, and they're nice for our community. This past couple of years, we've won, some amazing rewards. Princess Asturias Award in Spain, etc. Because now we're getting to the point, as the quality of Wikipedia is improved and the reputation is improved, and as more and more people understand we're not an internet company, we're not a Silicon Valley thing, we're actually a knowledge movement around the world, people are coming to realize this and to say, oh, actually, Wikipedia, we shouldn't think of it in that way. We shouldn't think of it as an important cultural institution that deserves to be supported in so many different ways. So sharing knowledge with the world is really what we're all about, and we want, if you imagine Wikipedia, if you visualize it in some way as this beautiful library, it's a little messier than that, and maybe our web pages aren't so beautifully designed, but they're very straightforward. In order to build this, we need everyone. We need everyone locally working on what they know about, so the knowledge can be transmitted around the world, and it's effectively the future of knowledge, as we say, it belongs to you. It belongs to everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it was crystal clear. Brilliant presentation.
We have an opportunity for people to ask questions. Of course, we have some questions which we received online, but while you're formulating your questions, perhaps you can ask them. You can put your questions in Russian because there will be a simultaneous interpretation. He doesn't understand what I'm saying right now, and it's very good. It's a good thing.
Yes.
But anyhow, people have. It's in Russian, English. It's in English. So you understand the writing?
Yeah.
So please go ahead.
Oh, okay.
And I have more questions, and
okay.
there are more questions coming.
So good evening, Jimbo. I'm very, very glad to see you here so much. What do you think now about the situation with Wikipedia and Roskomnadzor and other censorship issues with the Russian government? What do you think now? Yes, great. So obviously this is an issue that I've been watching very, very carefully. It's something that we are very concerned about, and but that I remain optimistic about. Our sense of it is that there is not really an interest on the part of the Russian government to ban Wikipedia. That's not really something that is in the cards. It's not the direction of travel. We do think that the current situation of the law is not optimal, and we would recommend some changes to the law to deal with the issue. And for us, our way of dealing with this so far is to really focus on our own principles and our own rules. So if there is something against drug propaganda, okay, well, we say this is fine because Wikipedia should not be propaganda about anything. But it is academic, and it is knowledge, and it is information, and it's something that we do think is very, very important. And we would really want to put forward the idea that we have a responsible community, a thoughtful community, who really take a lot of care to make sure that the information in Wikipedia follows reliable sources and is very good. I think it's really important that Wikipedia is beloved. People really love Wikipedia. It's part of the world. It's something that everyone is using. And certainly governments who think maybe we should ban Wikipedia, well, I think, will have a lot to answer for from the public who say, this doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's causing harm that you should be banning. And so we don't, I'm always optimistic. However, it is some issue that we have to continue to talk about and to think about. And well, there you go. That's what I think about it today. So I'll be returning to Russia to talk to people on this issue because I think it's incredibly important. We're facing right now the issue in China. We're completely blocked in China. So I went last December and had some meetings there to discuss the issue, and we continue to be in talks. But part of the problem is Wikipedia has a fundamental mission, and that fundamental mission is about sharing knowledge and high-quality resources. And if we begin to compromise on those principles, then we're going down a very unhelpful path, and we become something that we shouldn't become. So, well, let's hope for the best.
There are some more questions already asked on the internet. I will ask them in English, so I hope it will be translated. How do you treat the Wikipedias written by robots? There are some. In Swedish they say, in Dutch and other languages.
Yeah, so this is, I addressed this a little bit in my talk, but I should say a little bit more about it. So one of the things that happens is people, Wikipedia entries being written by robots, but that's actually, it sounds quite optimistic about AI or something like this. It's really more about templates and databases. And so you can find a database of data about a certain type of thing. Maybe it's animals, something like this, insects. There's so many different insects. And then you can plug in the data and onto a template and create lots and lots of articles. And this is, it's an interesting question because in general, one of the arguments is, well, they don't cause any harm. As long as the community vets the template, you get this. But the downsides also exist, which is if we do too much of this, then too much of Wikipedia starts to look badly written robot things. That's not good. So I take a bit of a middle approach, and I think it's really up to each language to decide. I personally find it a little frustrating, but for reasons that actually have nothing to do with anything anybody should really be concerned about, which is I used to always use the size of the Wikipedia as an indicator of how active it was. And now this is meaningless. One of the top Wikipedias, bigger than Russian Wikipedia, is a language I never heard of. And I've heard of almost all languages nowadays. So when you see this, you say, well, look, actually, there's no way you can call that a bigger Wikipedia. The other concern that people do have is if you have too many bot-written entries too early in the growth of a Wikipedia, then you actually can kill the growth of the community, as people don't feel that ownership of the content. They don't feel responsible for making it good. So it's a complicated issue.
Okay, a guy from Siberia asks, Jimmy, how often do you use Wikipedia yourself?
I use Wikipedia every single day, I think. Hardly a day goes by. In fact, one of the things that is always interesting to me is if you look at the statistics from ComScore or something like this, in the places where we're very much popular, I think the last time I looked, I think Austria and Canada were among the highest. Our reach numbers every month are about 38 to 40%. So somebody says to me, isn't that amazing that 38% of everyone in Canada uses Wikipedia every month? And I said, actually, it's strange to me because what the hell are the other 60% doing? How are you on the internet for a whole month and you didn't even visit Wikipedia once? I don't even understand this because, when you do any search anywhere, it's the first thing you find. But it just tells you that there is a huge chunk of people who are not doing informational searches. Maybe they're shopping and chatting with their friends and doing emails, and they're not, like me, a geek who thinks, Queen Victoria, we can go read Queen Victoria now. So I use it every day, just okay, like everybody.
Just one more pre-asked question, and then we give the floor to the audience. Yeah. Russian professors look down on Wikipedia. How does the attitude towards Wikipedia changes, for example, in the States or in Britain, where it becomes fuller and has more articles and maybe larger community?
So, I mean, what we see is there is a shift over time as Wikipedia grows, as the quality grows, but also as the understanding of professors grows, and also just the acceptance of the brutal fact that you can't tell students not to use Wikipedia any more than you can tell them not to listen to rock and roll music. 100% of students are using Wikipedia without a question. And so what I always say is, like, the real questions around this are not should students use Wikipedia, but how should students use Wikipedia? So what we need to teach students is what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, how do you judge the quality of a particular Wikipedia entry? What do you do? So Wikipedia is always, for a research project, it's almost always a good starting point, and it's almost never a good stopping point. It gets you oriented so you can dig deeper, and that's an important part of what we do. In terms of citing Wikipedia in academic papers, this isn't really a goal that I have, for the same reason that when I was at university, we weren't allowed to cite Britannica, even though it's a quality traditional encyclopedia, because, I mean, you're in college. Maybe if you're 12 years old, it's okay, but realistically, that's not what it's for. It's not that role in the research process. But I do find that attitudes everywhere are changing, and actually most people these days are fairly reasonable, even in Russia, I'm sure.
So the good advice probably is to link to the stories quoted and mentioned in the articles rather than to the articles themselves. Correct?
Exactly. And also, it's how you use Wikipedia. So, for example, I always give this example. So imagine that you're assigned in a course, a literature course, and you're reading a novel, and the novel is set in World War II, and it's the Battle of the Bulge. And you think, okay, I'm going to read this, and you think, oh, Battle of the Bulge, I probably heard that in history class somewhere, I don't really remember. So you go read the Wikipedia entry, which is, this long, it's quite good quality entry, about the Battle of the Bulge. Now you come back to the novel with a richer understanding of what were the soldiers facing, what was going on at that time. So then the novel, the emotional character and the symbolism and all this becomes more meaningful to you because you understand the perspective. Then when you go to write your paper, well, you wouldn't cite Wikipedia. There's nothing that you learn from Wikipedia that needs to be footnoted. It was background context, and I think that's the powerful way to use Wikipedia.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you see, we have, in Russia, you always had the lines. Yeah, you used to have the line. Now we have a line for questions. Okay, so please.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon. Jimmy, when you're answering the question on censorship, I think you said something about the social responsibility of information. To me personally, it's an important issue because based on the opinion which for a long time has been prevailing in the Russian Wikipedia community. Any information that could be sourced should be made available. For example, we had heated debates on the drugs and narcotics, and information available to doctors, to medical professionals, to drug police. So this information can be found in specialized information. Wikipedia is a different resource. It's open to all walks of life. And so we had heated debates. And we would like this. So the question is how this information should be presented, whether it should be made available or not. And as I gleaned from your answer, information should be responsible, socially responsible. It's been for a long time I was trying to strike a balance between safety of information or security of information and the public importance of information. So I wanted to strike this balance for a long time. I would like to hear your opinion on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things to remember is that it would be socially irresponsible to not talk about difficult issues in society. And so there are many things where the best solution that we have to a complex problem is education. And so if, for example, somebody, let's just pick a particular thing, methamphetamines. If somebody writes something on the internet somewhere that advocates for the use of methamphetamines as pushing the idea of this is a great thing, well, hopefully they'll end up at Wikipedia where they'll learn the incredible health hazards and the addiction and the dangers. And you need that kind of balance, and you need high quality information so that people then aren't fooled by drug dealers or other things like this. And so what this really amounts to is not saying, oh, we shouldn't have information about drug use and how drugs are used in society. We should have quality information so that people really have a deeper understanding of the issue, because this is the way forward. And so obviously there's a lot of questions that we could debate for hours, because we're Wikipedians and we do debate for hours about exactly how do you present it, how do you make sure that you're being fair and neutral and that you're presenting quality information. But I think it's very rare cases where factual information is itself dangerous. And in fact, the bigger danger is that people don't have access to factual information, because then they're vulnerable to lots of bad ideas.
Maybe you should also say that there is no censorship in Wikipedia.
There is no censorship in Wikipedia, but there is editorial judgment, and I think this is something that I like to talk about a lot. So this happens a lot in English Wikipedia, for example. People will come and say, look, they've deleted this, how dare they, this is censorship. And I say, no, actually, it's judged that this information is not valid, not reliable enough, or too trivial, or it may be personal information that's not well sourced or not of public interest. I mean, we often see this for, I'll give you a classic example. A small town politician, this is not about safety of information, but a small town politician who had an entry that was this long, of which this much was about his son was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. And you look at this and you say, actually, this politician, he's been a local council member for 30 years. You can't find anything really objectionable about his career. He's just like a normal guy who's been on the city council. And you say, look, just because this is sourceable doesn't mean it makes it a biography. It doesn't make it valid information. And so you can remove that and say, well, look, this is not relevant to this person's biography. It's just some personal information that's actually not even about him. It's about his son. So there you go. And that becomes an editorial judgment. And so if somebody says, oh, no, they censored about his son. Well, no, we didn't censor about his son. We just made the judgment that this doesn't make a good biography. So there's a lot of cases like that where people need to understand, like, Wikipedia is not a dumping ground for all possible information, that in fact it's about quality and about being thoughtful. But we are very open, and I think we'll continue to be very open, even if some authorities don't like that.
So let's take another one.
Yeah.
Следующий вопрос, пожалуйста.
Next question, please.
Wikipedia is a great project, but all my friends know about the Wikipedia project, but almost none of them know about OpenStreetMap project. Why don't you integrate with the OpenStreetMap project, and why don't you incorporate them or share the information with them or so on?
Great, yeah.
Because
So-
everybody in the modern world have to know about the OpenStreetMap project.
Yes.
This is the same.
So I personally love the OpenStreetMap project. We do collaborate with them. I think we could collaborate a lot more. So I don't think we have any resistance to that. And in fact, over the years, we've gotten better at partnership and collaboration. So in the early days, we were terrible at partnering or collaborating with anyone because we didn't even have the resources. So people might say, oh, why don't you do this with so-and-so? And I was like, well, we don't really have the resources. We can barely just keep the website running. Nowadays, we're much better at being proactive. We have a partnerships team, et cetera, et cetera. I actually don't know the current state of what we're doing with OpenStreetMap, but in principle, I agree with you. So, how's that?
Okay, so next one, please. Следующий, пожалуйста, вопрос.
Hello, Jimmy. My name is Alexander. A question on the hospital house. We've gathered here tonight, Yandex. Are you keeping track of traffic provided by Yandex? Do you do anything about the data, the traffic data that you receive from search engines?
Yeah, I mean, we have an analytics team who look at that sort of thing. I don't personally have any ideas. I wish I had two statistics or something useful to say, but I don't. You can contact Juliet at the Wikimedia Foundation. You can
Здесь есть представители
We have representatives of Wikipedia Russia. You can put this question to them.
Yeah.
And so you can put this question to them right after.
From the floor, and then we have 3 more questions from transmission. Maybe this lady? No?
Поднимите, пожалуйста, руку, не вижу вас.
Good afternoon, Jimmy. Yes. I have a question. I've written it down. I prepared. Many Wikipedia participants ran into the fact that there are certain articles which are beyond any edits, and some articles have either clearly negative or clearly positive content. When attempts are made to make it neutral and to bring it in line with Wikipedia rules, participants are blocked. To prove the point, look at Tempus Ignoker. Participants So to put it briefly, the most contentious Plain Goons article, so no edits are allowed to make it neutral. Translations from other articles, documents such as EU Parliament resolution and other Fangoon related documents are denied, and arbitration court ruling was also shrugged off. And it's different from similar articles in 49 other languages. So we see it as very negative. How this can be addressed? Thank you.
Right, great. So I don't know about this particular issue, but I would love to learn more about it. I'm always interested in cases like this. But in general, we see this in lots of places. So there can be lots of different reasons that things get blocked temporarily. One thing that can happen is on an issue that is particularly emotional or controversial for some people, we often get these clashes that are not really in keeping with the collaborative spirit of Wikipedia, and so oftentimes we'll have to protect something for some period of time just so everyone can calm down, and then we revisit the issue. In other cases, we have people pushing an agenda. So the concept of neutrality is a bedrock for Wikipedia, and most people, immediately understand it. However, if it's an issue that I'm personally quite passionate about, then I often find that neutrality itself can be uncomfortable. So for me, I'll give you a very personal example. I don't mean to be political, but if I go and read about Donald Trump, I shouldn't edit in this area because I get quite upset and emotional about this area. So I shouldn't edit because I found it very difficult to be neutral. And so these are some of the things that can happen, but there's all kinds of different cases, and there are cases around the world where I mean, I know of many cases in English where I think there is a problem, maybe not a super serious problem, but a problem where the community has maybe gone too far because they're so exhausted by a conflict that they just want to stop the conflict for too long. And I think, no, actually, we should try and reopen the issue gently again and things like that. So there's always ways. For the specific details, obviously, you should speak to the Russian community.
Is the Trump article frozen now?
No, probably not. Usually for major political figures, the articles will be under what we call semi-protection, which means roughly you can't just turn up and start editing because it just causes too much trouble because people just come by and go, you know, but it would tend to be open because you have to, because there's a lot of news coming out, so there's new information all the time. So.
Okay, there is a number of questions. You can choose yourself if you want.
Okay.
That were asked by people watching the online.
Right. I'm going to talk about this one. Does Wikipedia have any problems except financial? Tell us what we can do to make Wikipedia better. So I'll talk a little bit about the financial side of things. So we always have to take fundraising very seriously. We are a charity, we're a nonprofit. We exist primarily from small donations. And we do get some major contributions and things like that that are much appreciated. But financially, we're stable. Even we have to take fundraising seriously, but we run the organization in a very cautious way. We try to be financially responsible, have a low budget and things like that. So it's all right. So I always want to say that because we do ask the public for money, and I want you to worry about us, but not panic about us. So we need your help, but it's not no emergencies at the moment. In terms of other ways to help, I mean, we do have a need for more editors, more contributors. One of the things that we know is that our core editing community has been fairly stable for several years, which is fine, sort of. I always say on the number of editors, it is not a fundamental goal of Wikipedia to have more and more and more editors. That's not really what it's about. But we need enough editors, and we need quality editors. And so if we know in any community, obviously, people may have a hobby for a few years, and then, they move on to something else. We always want to have fresh, new people coming in. We want old people who leave to leave because they found something interesting that is perfectly fine. It's a volunteer. You can do as you like. But we don't want people to leave because they've had some conflict that wasn't handled well, or they had harassment and things like that. So we do take a lot of care to think about the community and community health and making sure that things are fair and neutral and so forth. So that's, probably the biggest thing. And then the other thing is there's lots of different ways to get involved. So you can get involved as simply as just come and start participating in editing, but you can also get involved with the chapters, people who work at any kind of cultural institution to think about how could your institution participate or share knowledge, etc.
Okay, so I have one more question here in Russian. You couldn't understand it. So it says about free open licenses. How do you use them in Wikipedia? If it's possible, I would like to ask it in a different way. Today is Dmitri Medvedev's birthday, and he's the guy basically who was behind the introduction of free open licenses in Russia. But he also had another idea. There should be a global reform of copyright. Do you think he's right on that, or do you think he's pushing the wrong agenda? What's your opinion? And the open licenses as well.
Yeah. So obviously, for our work, open licenses are incredibly important. And I talked a lot about that earlier, that it allows knowledge to be transmitted across cultures. It allows a fair way for cultural institutions to participate in Wikipedia and fulfill their agenda, etc. So it's incredibly important to us that these licenses be in the law and actually understood and protected in the law as a valid alternative to traditional copyright, which isn't very useful for us. And in terms of global copyright reform, I would say, yeah, there's actually several areas where I would support reform, but obviously you get very nervous about global reform because oftentimes these kind of treaty negotiations take place with very little consultation with people like us. They become a place for Hollywood to spend a lot of money, and their idea of reform is lock everything down, and it's like, that's not really the problem we want to solve. So for me, I'll give my favorite type of example. So typically, if you say YouTube as an example. So if you take a film of your child's birthday party, and in the background is playing some famous pop music, and then you put it on YouTube and you have no followers, or you only have your family following, and it goes on YouTube, and you send the link because you want grandma to see the party, she couldn't make it, it's very likely that Google will automatically detect the song track, flag it as a copyright violation, and silence the track of your movie. Okay, well, this is the kind of thing, like, if we think this is piracy, we're really thinking in the wrong way. Like, this is not piracy, this is how people expect to be able to use the music that they have a legal right to use. And that's the kind of sort of de minimis use of things that I think should be more directly recognized in the law, because people are doing it all the time. It's how we expect. And even though I do think that copyright is a valuable concept, I think we have too much of a one-size-fits-all copyright. So I always like to think about textbooks. So maybe it's important. I mean, who wants to fight the fight about some Disney property that's 30 years old, and should it be in the public domain yet? Okay, Disney's got to make more money, so it's okay. I'm not going to win that fight. But suppose there's an algebra text that's 15 years old. And I picked 15 because the original length of copyright was 14 years. And no one's renewed the copyright, because you don't even have to do that anymore. Now that book will not be available for our community to take for the life of the author plus 70, or if it's corporate ownership, it's 95 years. I mean, come on, it's an algebra textbook, and it's not even being sold. And they've moved on. So why can't we just take that, put it on Wikibooks, modify it, update it, use it as the basis of computer programs and all kinds of interesting things? So the one-size-fits-all model doesn't work. But how do you get to global copyright reform is very, very difficult. I would say, sort of going back to the Berne Convention would be a nice start.
Moscow Convention.
Pardon?
The Moscow Convention.
The Moscow Convention, very good.
Okay.
Now, but I do think, and I've said this before, and somebody then tried to spin it as me being a massive political supporter of Medvedev, which I'm not, whatever, it's not my business to speak on Russian politics at all. But I did say once that he's one of the few world leaders who appears to actually understand the internet. And this is my biggest problem with a lot of politicians, is they pontificate about this or that topic, and they seem to have actually no idea how the internet works and what would be effective legislation. So the problems they want to solve may be real problems, but the proposals they have for solving them are useless and actually harmful. And so I do think it's important that we do have politicians who are thoughtful about progressively adapting various copyright law to the way people are actually using the internet and so forth.
So let him have happy birthday. Okay,
so happy birthday.
Then one last question, and probably then some informal communication is possible, okay? Последний вопрос, и после этого можно просто
So final question, and then we can have some informal communication.
According to the new Russian law, you must provide encryption case to FSB. Are you ready to do this?
I'm sorry, couldn't quite...
There is a new Russian law where you have to provide
encryption case to FSB.
Encryption keys, yeah. Well, this is a good example of a law which is trying to solve what may be a legitimate problem, but which fails to completely fails to understand technology. We now have end-to-end encryption in so many consumer-level apps, and encryption is math. You can't really ban math. You can't control these things, and so you can understand if you're sympathetic. I'm not that sympathetic, but if you're sympathetic, you can understand some of the desires and some of the problems that you have. But I'm a very, very big advocate of having strong encryption in many, many places. The bigger danger that we face is from an insecure internet, identity theft, stolen passwords, all of these kinds of things. I want internet companies to feel nervous about their legal position if they're not providing strong encryption, rather than for them to be nervous about providing their customers something to help them be safe. So, good luck is all I can tell governments who think they're going to do this, because the genie's out of the bottle, as they say. So.
Okay. So
great.
I think we're over. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.